Jerusalem. Summer, 1099, Crusader swords gleam under a blood-orange sky, priests chant. Fires rise, but somewhere behind a shattered wall, a woman hums a lullaby. You've heard of conquest, you've heard of heroism, but not this, not the stories whispered between mezuzahs and smoke. This is not about power, it's about memory, and what remains, when even the stones stop remembering your name. So I ask you, have you ever wondered what survives? When even the stones forget your name, not the palaces, not the towers, but the breath of a lullaby, sung behind bolted shutters. You weren't there, but perhaps your grandmother's sigh carried something of that time. Tonight, let me take you to Jerusalem, not to preach, not to scream, only to remember, to trace, gently, the cracks left by the quiet genius of those who perished with their doors still open. Before we begin, if this journey stirs something in you, leave a like, or gently subscribe, and if you're listening from somewhere quiet, let me know your city or time zone in the comments. Now lower the lights, turn on a fan if you like the background whoosh. And let the journey begin, because memory isn't just what we keep, it's what keeps us. You are a child of Jerusalem, though your name may be Levi, Miriam, Shoshana, or none of those at all. The year is 1099, and the summer heat in the alleys of the Jewish quarter smells of dust and stewed lentils. Your mother fans the bread dough, coaxing it to rise, while your father mutters over the Gemara by candlelight, though the sun still burns outside. He does that. Claims daylight is too loud for real learning. Your house, stone, small, stubborn, sits near the northern edge, not far from the shuk where copper bowls glint like fallen moons. The door is never locked. Not really. It creaks, but it never locks. To be Jewish here is to expect strangers at mealtime, to fold the napkin an extra time, to save the ripest fig for someone whose name you don't yet know. And then comes the knock, not polite, not rhythmic, not local. It's the kind of knock that arrives from across the sea, carried on chainmail and prayers to the wrong god. Your uncle says the Crusaders are still days away, your neighbor says they're already in the Armenian quarter, your grandmother says nothing, just tightens the cloth around her head and kisses the mezuzah twice instead of once. You try to breathe, but the air is thick with burnt sheep fat from the Temple Mount and the stench of fear. You don't know it's fear, not yet. It smells like your cousin's wedding last winter, when too many guests crowded the oven room. Your father gathers his books. Not valuables. Books. Pages still damp from yesterday's wine spill. He wraps them in linen, not to protect them, but because linen can breathe. If Torah must burn, he says dryly, let it at least do so like a mensch. The knock comes again, now it's more of a pounding. Your little brother whispers, maybe it's Eliyahu Hanavi. You almost laugh. Almost, but no prophet would wear that many boots. History will debate what happened next. Some say the gates held. Some say they were opened from within. Some say betrayal. Others, miracle, though the miracle must have lost its shoes along the way. But here's what you remember, the neighbor's rooster stopped crowing. The wind that always rattled the southern shutters stilled. And the sky. The sky turned the color of old cheesecloth. Dusty, yellow, embarrassed to look down, you are dragged, no, guided, by your mother to the cellar. She presses a clay amulet into your palm. You can still feel its imprint years later. A crude lion etched into it, symbol of Judah, protection against the evil eye. She whispers a lullaby you don't recognize, and you realize it's one her mother sang in Worms, or maybe Cordoba. You're not sure. Memory is not so precise under siege. There's a knock in your head now. Rhythmic. From the inside, and still, the door upstairs is open. Still. Even as screams thread the air like yarn through a loom, even as someone chants a Tehillim psalm, off-key, defiant, that mezuzah, the one with the chipped silver casing, slightly askew, remains nailed to the lintel. The parchment inside is written by your grandfather's hand. You remember because he made a joke about how the shin looked like it had gout. He died last spring. Lucky him. There is no time to carry him, no time to carry anything. You remember a story your father told once, of Rabbi Akiva laughing at the Roman destruction of Jerusalem because it meant the prophecies would come true. You laughed too. Then, now, you just taste copper in your throat and wish you'd eaten more of the lentils. The Crusaders are not angels of death. Angels are cleaner. These men reek of sweat, leather, and bad theology. You do not see them yet. But you hear a woman's voice reciting the Shema, a child crying for water, and footsteps that make the stone tremble, like Goliath has come back, just smaller and meaner. No one talks about what the Jewish quarter smelled like after that, maybe because no one remained to say, but if you ever catch a whiff of scorched thyme, or burnt hair on iron, well, now you'll know. And yet, the door was never locked. It was never locked because it was never meant to be. That was the genius. The curse. The hospitality of a people who always believed the world might come for a meal. Not a massacre. Your mother's challah burns in the oven, forgotten, but the lion amulet in your hand stays warm, almost pulsing, like something ancient refusing to leave. You close your eyes, and even now, through smoke, you hear your grandfather's voice, teasing from memory, if they burn the Torah, at least they'll finally read it. You almost smile. The streets outside sound like metal against bone. You've never heard that sound before, not in this way. You've heard knives on chicken necks, sure, you've heard hammers on copper at the smith's forge, but this sound, this wet clang, this ruinous rhythm, is what happens when 1,000 armored men decide that God needs help remembering who he loves. You're no soldier. You are 13, or perhaps 11, depending on which uncle is bragging at the time, but you know that the alley leading to the synagogue is the one place everyone agrees upon. If anything happens, go there, because the synagogue has thick walls, because it has Torah scrolls, because it has always been there. You can still smell last week's beeswax in the corners, that, and the parchment, the holy kind, the treated, stretched animal skin that makes up every sacred scroll. The aroma of it was always comforting to you. Now it mingles with something else, iron. Raw iron. Blood. You do not remember how you got to the synagogue, only that your cousin is beside you, clutching a velvet tefillin pouch like it can grant wishes, and that someone is singing loudly in Ladino. Why Ladino? You don't know, but the voice is cracked, defiant, half-mocking. It's an old merchant, maybe, the one with the limp. He sings about Esther. About saving the Jews, but this Purim, the king has not come. And the gallows were already built, around you. They light candles even though it's daylight, not for Shabbat, not for mourning, yet, but because the dark is coming faster than expected, and no one wants to die in shadow. A rabbi begins to chant. You don't know his name, but you've seen him argue with your father in the marketplace over whether lentils are proper for the 9th of Av. He is now calm. Too calm. He recites Psalm 79, O God, the nations have invaded your inheritance, they have defiled your holy temple, they have reduced Jerusalem to rubble. You look around, this is the holy temple now. Stone benches. Cracked tiles, a single stained talith flung across the bima, where someone tried to cover the Torah scrolls, not to hide them, just to keep them from seeing. The front doors are barred, not that it will matter, they're burning the Jewish quarter. You hear someone say, the baker's house is gone. The wine cellar collapsed, the wind carries the smell of boiling fat, human, not animal, and it curls beneath the synagogue door like a demon seeking entry. A woman clutches her baby in the far corner. The baby isn't crying anymore. You wonder if that's good. Someone hands you a torn piece of parchment. From the Torah, maybe, maybe not. You trace the letters with your finger. Bet. Resh. Aleph. Sheet, Bereshit. In the beginning. What an odd place to start. Now, a boy beside you whispers, will they show mercy? And the man replies, they came 3,000 miles to kill us for our mercy. It's not a joke, but everyone chuckles like it is. the mystery of it all, later, will be this: why this synagogue, why here, when other Jews fled to caves or bribed their way out? Was it trust? Was it tradition? Was it simply less terrifying to die surrounded by God? Your grandmother used to say that a synagogue is where heaven folds a little closer to earth. Tonight, it folds too close, so close, you could bite it, and then, the door doesn't explode. It splinters. 1 Crusader. Then 3. Then 7, they smell like sweat and vinegar, they scream in Latin, you don't understand the words, but you know what they mean. The rabbi steps forward. Slowly, he opens his arms, he says one thing. Just one, Shema Yisrael. And they strike him, the Torah scrolls fall, you don't know who grabs you, you don't know how you end up under the stone bench, from there, you see only feet. Sandals. Blood. Fringes of talith. And shattered glass from the eternal lamp. It flickers for one moment longer than you expect, as if trying, in vain, to stay lit. Later, some will say the synagogue was burned, others will say it was soaked in blood but left standing, still others will say an angel wept in the rafters, but no one heard. You will never know which is true, but you will remember the smell: parchment, beeswax, iron, like Torah and sacrifice, mixed together by hands not your own. The Crusaders leave, eventually, their work is done, they have purified the city, they say they've reclaimed it for Christ, but the scrolls are still here, aren't they, even torn, even stained. The word doesn't leave just because you poke holes in its skin, you crawl out from under the bench, hours later. Maybe days, the light that filters through the broken wall is golden. Quiet, you find one scrap of the scroll. One line, let there be light. And somehow, it's still warm. You were told the scribes never stop. Not for hunger, not for headache, not even for war. A sofer writes as if time itself depends on his quill, every letter must be perfect. Every crown drawn just so, one mistake, and the scroll becomes only parchment again, holy, then nothing. Like a name forgotten, you remember the scribe's room well. North-facing window, a bench worn smooth by generations of anxious scholars, that faint scent of gall ink, sharp, earthy, like crushed walnut shells left too long in the sun. You used to linger there, watching the way the letters flowed like they were being remembered. Not invented, today, the room is silent, not the peaceful kind, the kind that follows violence. The ink has dried. Mid-word, mid-verse, the last letter begun is a lamed, tall, curving up like a reaching hand. It never got its crown. Outside, the wind carries the ashes of the burned quarter eastward. Toward the Mount of Olives, you wonder if the graves there know what's happened, if they feel the heat rising, even underground. The scribe who once worked here, Reb Itzhak, with his squint and his peppermint breath, is nowhere to be found. You don't know if he escaped, if he fought, or if he now lies beneath the courtyard with the others. What you do know is this: his ink bottle is still open, and his quill has snapped, not gently. The table has blood on it, but also butter. Someone left a crust of bread on the windowsill, uneaten, hardening beside a copy of the Sefer Haggadah. A child's voice echoes faintly from another room. He is reciting Aleph Bet. Out of order, maybe on purpose, maybe to confuse death. You step closer to the scroll, still stretched across the table. It was nearly finished, just a few verses more, and it would have joined the others in the ark. Instead, it lies there like a wounded creature, its margins curling, its skin puckered from fire and fear. There is an argument later, one that will last centuries, about whether these damaged scrolls should be buried, or finished, or left untouched as testimony. Some rabbis say a scroll like that is a martyr, others say it must be burned and buried, so as not to shame the holy name with imperfection. You don't know which is right, but as you run your hand across the stiff surface, you feel something like warmth, or stubbornness. That's the thing about Jewish letters: they don't vanish quietly, they imprint themselves, on paper, on skin, on history. There's an old minhag, your aunt once told you, that a scribe must immerse in a mikveh before writing the name of God. Even if it's freezing. Even if it's the 10th time that day, holiness demands cleanliness. Today, the name of God lies among blood and dust, but somehow, it still feels clean. Someone stumbles into the room, an older man, face ash-covered, shoes missing. He looks at you, then at the scroll. He sits, he picks up a broken reed pen from the floor, and without speaking, he begins to finish the verse. The ink is gone, but he traces the letters in air. You watch, and somehow, you believe the angels do too. Outside, Crusaders chant their Latin victory hymns. They do not enter this room, not yet. Perhaps it's the smell, too much ash and ink, perhaps it's fear, even conquerors feel it. Sometimes, the man stands, he nods to you, and he leaves. You linger, there is nowhere else to go. You look down again at the scroll and trace the last word, Chesed. Kindness, how absurd, but even absurdity is holy. Sometimes, you sit beside the scroll, knees pulled to your chest, you hum softly, a lullaby about Jerusalem that your grandfather taught you, half out of tune, half in tears. He claimed his own grandfather had sung it in Mainz, or maybe Prague. No one ever agreed on the city, but the words are always the same, Yerushalayim shel Zahav. Jerusalem of gold. You whisper it now, like a spell, and in the margins of the parchment, amid the blood, a single letter seems to shine, just for a moment, a tiny yud, no taller than your thumbnail, curved like a comma in God's breath. You stay there, with the scroll, with the drying ink, with the silence, because someone must. You find her in the baker's house. Or what's left of it, the roof is gone. A crusader's lance sits impaled in the flour bin like a flag declaring war on yeast, but the smell. The smell remains, burned crust, sourdough starter, and that faint sweetness that only comes from honey stirred in at sunrise. Your stomach growls before your memory does. That's how grief works, it sneaks in through hunger. She is hunched in the corner, soot on her cheeks, arms cradling an empty basket like it's still full. You know her name, Rivka. The widow, 3 sons. 1 oven. No complaints. Your mother bought bread from her every Erev Shabbat, braided with care, the strands always uneven, always perfect. She claimed her halal recipe came from Alexandria, through Thessaloniki, by way of her grandmother's dreams. You crouch beside her, she doesn't startle. She doesn't cry, instead, she whispers, they didn't take the loaves. You don't understand, until she shows you. Wrapped in scorched linen are 3 half-burnt shallot, blackened at the edges, but still intact. She pulls one apart. Between the layers of dough, glinting like misplaced stars, are coins, gold bezants. Byzantine, enough to buy passage out, enough, maybe, to buy mercy, I thought. If we had to run, she murmurs, they'd be hungry. Her sons, she baked them bread, she filled it with gold, because sometimes, the only treasure a Jew can carry is hidden in a blessing. But her sons never made it to the table. One was taken at the gate, one never came back from the well, one. She does not say, you try to offer her water, she laughs. A dry, cracking sound, give it to the oven. She says. It's still warm. You glance at the oven, stone, squat, battered, still smoking. Inside, there's a tray, flat, charred, on it, a few sesame seeds cling like survivors, the rest are ashes, and yet, somehow, she reaches in and pulls out one last loaf, crisped, blackened, perfect in shape. She hands it to you. Eat, she says. You don't know if it's safe, you don't know if it's a curse, but you take a bite. The crust crumbles like memory, the center is warm. And for a moment, impossibly, it tastes like a Friday night before everything went wrong. Olive oil, egg, honey, home, somewhere beyond the quarter. Crusaders cheer, they've reached the temple. They've rededicated it with blood. History will call it a victory, heaven will call it a tragedy. Rivka closes her eyes, she begins to sing, a Shabbat song, Zemarot. Her voice is hoarse, but steady, like a woman who knows the tune better than the story, like a woman who has nothing left to give, so she gives melody. You join her, softly, because even if there's no Shabbat left in the city, there's still breath, and that, sometimes, is enough to sanctify a corner, in a pouch beside the oven. She shows you a small brass spoon, etched with birds and vines. It was her dowry. She calls it her kli kodesh, a holy utensil. She used it only to measure salt. Salt, she says, remembers every tear. There is no salt left in the house, only soot, and gold, hidden in bread that no one will eat. Later, you will carry one of the loaves, not to eat, but to remember, that even as the city fell, a mother baked, and she braided her grief into hope. The stairs are narrow, winding, carved from limestone that remembers sandals better than boots. You climb without thinking, without permission, upward, because that's where the air is clearer. Because when a city is drowning in smoke, the rooftops are the only places left to breathe. You reach the top, flat stone, still warm from the sun's retreat. You can see everything from here. The Temple Mount, its golden cap smeared in ash, the Christian quarter, loud with triumph, the alley where the shochet once sharpened his knife, now lined with silence, and the square where they say Torah scrolls were burned while the conquerors sang. But it's not what you see, it's what you hear. Voices, thin, urgent, half prayer, half code. They travel from rooftop to rooftop like ghosts who forgot how to die. She's alive. Near the mikveh. 2 children. Hidden in the wine cellar. They're coming through the east gate. No horses. On foot. Jerusalem's rooftops have always spoken. In quieter times, they gossiped. Who's betrothed? Who's gone bankrupt? Whether the new cantor can hit the high note in Nishmat. But now, they whisper warnings, breadcrumb trails of survival. You hear a boy 2 rooftops over call a name, not yours. Not his, just a name, maybe of someone already gone, maybe of someone worth saving. Below, a Crusader curses in French, his voice echoes off stone like a poorly aimed arrow. He doesn't look up, they never do. Your grandfather once said Jews survive because they learn to see from the margins, from balconies, from thresholds, from rooftops. You want power, he said, go down into the square. You want truth? Climb. You crawl along the edge, hands steady on rough stone. There, beside a chimney, an old woman, wrapped in a shawl, her eyes like boiled almonds. She holds a mirror in one hand, angled toward the street below. She's watching them. You whisper. The boy beside you nods. You hadn't realized there was a boy beside you. He wears no shoes. He carries a slingshot. Who is she? You ask. She was a midwife. Before all this, now she tells us where not to go. The mirror flicks once, left, then right, a signal, and from 3 rooftops away, someone nods. You marvel. This is not rebellion, this is choreography. Jerusalem danced in silence. There's a sudden shout from below. A Crusader has found someone. You don't look, you focus instead on the birds overhead, sparrows. Still singing, the boy with the slingshot lifts a stone, then lowers it. No good, he mutters. Too many of them. Too far. You say nothing. You're not here to fight, you're here to listen. Your fingers graze the rooftop ledge. Someone has carved a word into the stone. It's not Hebrew. Not Latin, Yiddish, maybe, or just scratched lines made by frightened hands. It reads, Zeh Jezent. Be well, a farewell, not a plea, a blessing, carved where only the sky could read it. From the rooftop you see the bakery collapse in on itself. The fire there is smoldering now, just smoke. You remember the gold and the hallah, and somehow, this rooftop feels holier than any sanctuary, because it is unadorned, because it still hears, because it refuses to fall. The boy taps your arm. We go at dusk, he says. Where? To the cistern tunnels. There's a woman who remembers the way. You nod, because when a city collapses, memory becomes infrastructure. You rise, stretching limbs that forgot they belonged to a body. The wind lifts the edge of your shirt, cool against your ribs. You take one last look at the old woman and her mirror. She doesn't look back, she keeps watching. You climb down quietly, placing your feet where others placed theirs, stone to step, step to silence. The whispers continue overhead, the city, speaking in code, in faith, in fragments, and in the hush between signals, you hear your name, spoken from a rooftop you cannot see, spoken like a prayer that refuses to stay buried. There is no reason to blow the shofar, it's not Rosh Hashanah. Not Yom Kippur, no fast to break, no king to crown, only dust in the lungs, blood in the drains, and silence where prayers used to rise. But you hear it anyway, low, cracked, defiant. It startles the birds from the eastern wall, even the Crusaders pause. They don't understand what it means. They think it's some Jewish cry for help, a signal for surrender, but the ones who know, we know it is neither. The sound is older than swords, older than cities. It's what Abraham held in his hand when the angel stopped him. It's what was blown when Jericho fell. It's not music, it's memory. You find him on a rooftop, shirt torn, beard singed. He looks more prophet than man, a butcher by trade, Haim, you think. But his hands know how to lift something heavy and make it holy. He raises the shofar again. It's crooked, cracked at the base, the mouthpiece stained with sweat and centuries. It should not work, it should not still speak, but it does. The sound cuts through the smoke like a knife through warm bread. Tikia, Shavarim, Teruah, a full cycle, like on the high holidays. He finishes with one long Tikia Gedola, so long it nearly breaks him. When he's done, the city is quieter, even the flames seem to dim. A woman from below shouts up, "You'll bring them to us." He shouts back, "Then let them come." It is not bravery, it is stubbornness. There's a joke your uncle used to tell, about a man who refused to run when the Cossacks came. "They'll have to drag me out by my beard," he said. They did, and he cursed them the whole way, not for violence, but for bad manners. This feels like that, a protest not just of war, but of indecency. You ask him why he did it. He shrugs, no one else was going to. Then he sits down, not in triumph, just to rest. His shofar rolls to the edge of the rooftop. You catch it. It's warm, slick, the crack along its base pulses faintly, as if it has a heartbeat. Someone lights a candle beside you. You don't know who, but the flame flickers in the smoke, brave and ridiculous. Below, the Crusaders continue. You hear a child scream, you hear someone laugh, but you also hear, faintly, another shofar. Far off, northwest, maybe by the old tannery. You look at the man beside you, he nods. "Good," he says. "They heard me." There's an old superstition, your grandmother used to say it before bed, if the shofar sounds where it shouldn't, the dead sit up to listen. You wonder who has sat up today. The man starts to hum, something wordless, a nigan, maybe. It catches in your throat. You look down at the shofar again, you raise it to your lips. You do not know how to blow it, but you try. The sound is pitiful, a sputter. The man laughs gently. "Good," he says. "Better broken and trying, than whole and silent." Later, they will say this was madness, that a man should call attention to himself in a city of knives, but later is for survivors, now is for witnesses. The smoke thickens. The rooftops vanish, but the sound of that first blast lingers, long after the man is gone, long after the horn is lost, long after the Crusaders forget why they ever came. It echoes, and somewhere beneath the city, where the tunnels twist and the children whisper lullabies, a baby hears it, and does not cry. The doorframe is still standing, the house is not, its roof has collapsed inward like a broken ribcage. The walls are scorched down to the stone bones, ash carpets. Everything, except the threshold, there, somehow, the mezuzah remains. You approach slowly, out of reverence, out of fear. You don't know if the house is still alive or if it's a grave with wallpaper. The mezuzah leans at an angle, half melted, its casing warped from the fire, but inside, perhaps, the scroll still curls. You want to check, but your hands hesitate. You've been taught not to touch it too long, not to open it unless you are scribing, repairing, or burying. but what do you do when a mezuzah has been baptized in flame? Your father once told you. The mezuzah doesn't protect the house from outside, it reminds the inside who they are. Now, there is no inside, only cinders. Still, you place 2 fingers on what remains, gently. The metal is warm, beneath your fingers, ash smears like charcoal. You don't kiss it, not because you forget, because your lips tremble too much. Inside, the house smells like singed wool, old onions, and the ghosts of Friday nights. A copper ladle, blackened but unbent, lies in the rubble beside a child's sandal. On a back wall, faint soot lines show where a bookshelf once stood. Torah, Mishnah, Midrash, all burned, but still whispering. You sit on the stone step, there's nowhere else to go, and suddenly, you think of the story of Rabbi Chanina ben Teradion, how the Romans wrapped him in a Torah scroll, lit it aflame, and placed wet wool over his chest to prolong the pain. He died with the Shema on his lips. His students asked him what he saw. He said, I see the parchment burning, but the letters flying upward. You wonder if the same thing happened here, if somewhere above this house, letters are still rising, not in fire. In memory, a neighbor passes by. She's carrying a chicken under one arm and a sack of flour on her back. She sees you at the doorstep. Anyone left? She asks. You shake your head. She doesn't cry. She just sighs, rubs her eyes with flour-covered fingers, and keeps walking, because sometimes, survival means not stopping long enough for grief to sit beside you. You look again at the mezuzah. It's leaning more now. As if the wall can no longer carry what it used to believe. There's a superstition among some Jews, not universal, but whispered in old kitchens, that if a mezuzah burns but the scroll survives, it means God stayed behind, not to abandon, to witness. You imagine him now, in the doorway, head bowed, watching. You pluck a shard of wood from the wreckage. On it, faint Hebrew letters, the remnants of someone's bedtime blessing. Perhaps, you tuck it into your sleeve, because even splinters can be sacred. Before you leave, you take a piece of fabric from the rubble. It's striped, like a talith, torn, singed, but still soft. You wrap it gently around the mezuzah, like a burial shroud. Not to hide it, to honor it. As you walk away, the wind kicks up ash behind you. It curls around your ankles, your wrists, your memory, and you think, maybe the mezuzah never needed the house, maybe it only ever needed the door, a line, a boundary, between what burns and what refuses. You didn't mean to follow the goat, you were chasing your breath, lost it somewhere between the screams on the eastern wall and the baby's cry near the ruined tannery, but the goat had other plans. Brown bell around its neck. One broken horn, one perfect eye. It bursts from a broken doorway like it owns Jerusalem, as if the siege were nothing more than an inconvenience in its grazing schedule. You pause just long enough to see where it's going, not down the main road, where the Crusaders are dragging bodies and shouting in 4 languages, not toward the gate, where some poor souls are still begging to be let out. No, the goat turns into a crack between 2 stone walls so narrow you wouldn't fit if you hadn't missed your last 4 meals. You follow. There's an old minhag that goats know where the angels hide. Something your grandmother whispered while lighting Shabbat candles. She'd flick the match, murmur a blessing, then tap your cheek and say, watch the goats. They remember Eden. The passage smells like rosemary and damp stone. Above, buildings lean over you like judgmental elders. You brush your hand along the wall. It's rough, pocked. Carved in one place with the outline of a hand, too small for a man, too tall for a child. The goat trots ahead, calm as a canter on the bima, and you start to notice it. This isn't a street, it's a footpath. One of those winding alleys that don't exist on maps but live in the muscle memory of delivery boys, old thieves, and nosy widows. Jerusalem's nervous system. The goat pauses, glances back. You swear it raises one eyebrow. Then it ducks through a low arch barely 3 bricks tall. You crawl after it, and suddenly, you're in someone's abandoned courtyard, a fig tree. 3 broken clay pots, a stone oven, cold. On the wall, a faded chalk drawing of a 7-branched menorah, childish, uneven, beloved, the goat munches on a leaf, you hear footsteps. Loud. Metal. Crusader boots, you duck behind the oven, hold your breath, they pass, close enough to smell the vinegar on their armor, the goat doesn't flinch, just chews, as if to say, your panic is not my problem. When the sounds fade, you exhale, then you laugh, you're still alive, the goat butts the side of the fig tree, hard, and the earth shifts, the stone tilts, you see a gap beneath its roots, not a burrow. Not a coincidence. A tunnel, you look at the goat, it looks back, you nod, because in Jerusalem, even the goats are prophets, you slide into the hole, brushing aside roots and dust, it's narrow, but it widens fast, stale air. Damp walls, and there, torchlight, 2 children sit cross-legged, chewing stale bread, their eyes widen when they see you, you followed the goat. One asks, you nod, their sister appears from the shadows, she holds a candle stub, eyes fierce, that goat saved 6 people already, she says, don't scare it. You hold up your hands in surrender, the goat lumbers in behind you, utterly unfazed. Later, they'll tell you the tunnel leads all the way to the Kidron Valley, that it was built by spice merchants centuries ago to smuggle cinnamon and saffron during Roman curfews, that no crusader could follow, because only someone born in the city would know how to duck under the second beam and avoid the trap door near the mikveh ruins. But right now, you just sit, you pet the goat, its fur is coarse, peppered with ash. There's a bell tied around its neck, someone carved a word into the brass, mazel. Luck, you smile, and for the first time in days, it isn't bitter, the children share their bread, you offer a handful of raisins from your pocket, together, you sing a song. A silly one. About goats, Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya. You hum it softly, and in that little tunnel, under a city on fire, the goat dozes off, outside, the world burns, inside, memory grows horns and finds a way through the cracks, there's a kind of silence that settles when writing is the only thing left to do, no speeches. No sermons, just ink, paper, and the knowledge that memory is heavier than stone, you descend into the ruined Beit Midrash, where once the walls hummed with argument, now it smells like smoke and damp wool, pages flutter in the corners like dying birds, charred scrolls curl in on themselves, words that tried to survive fire and lost, but not all. In the corner, 3 men hunch over a table, the youngest grinds gallnuts with water from a cracked cistern, the oldest dips a quill into a half-empty jar of ink, and the third, bent-backed, eyes half-shut from age or grief, whispers names aloud as they're written. They are not copying Torah, not Mishnah, not even Psalms, they are writing names, a register of the living, and the dead. Leah bat Moshe, the old man says, the quill moves. Yaakov ben Avraham. Shava the baker. No titles, no dates, just names, you ask, softly, why now? The old man looks up, his eyes are glassy, the white's gone yellow like old parchment, because if no one writes them, he says, they'll vanish, and if they vanish, who will argue with God about what happened here? You kneel beside the scribe, his hand trembles, but the letters are perfect, Ashkenazi script. Wide, legible, noble, he pauses to blow gently on the wet ink, a tear falls onto the parchment, he doesn't brush it away, the ink runs slightly, but he keeps going. You recognize the next name, your cousin, you saw him fall near the spice market, you close your eyes, the sound of the chauffeur still echoes somewhere behind your ribs, a 4th man enters, he's holding a sack. He doesn't speak, he just empties it onto the table, charred bits of parchment, fragments of scrolls, one piece flutters onto your lap, you hold it up, it reads, barely, Yuvacharta Melcha, you shall choose for yourself, it's from Deuteronomy, you don't remember the rest, the scribe takes it, kisses the fragment, and places it carefully beside the list of names, a pairing of what was commanded and who obeyed. There's a quiet debate about the ink, they're running low. Someone suggests using wine, someone else says, no, salt water. And that's what they do, saltwater, from tears. From pickling jars. From what was left in the mikveh basin, the letters come out paler. More fragile, but they hold, you notice, tucked beneath the table, a wooden box, inside, prayer shawls folded tight, each one with a name stitched into the corner. The scribe sees you looking, he says, when the writing is gone, maybe the stitches will still speak. You offer to help, your penmanship is poor, but you've carried names before, in your mouth, in your chest, in the pockets of borrowed coats. You write one, then another, you forget how many, each name feels like a thread, tying something together that you can't yet name. You pause when you reach your own, you hesitate. Then write it down, not for ego, for witness. You ask what they'll do with the pages. The old man shrugs. Maybe they'll be buried, maybe someone will find them, maybe God will read them someday, and remember. He dips the quill again. You stay until your fingers blister, until your back aches, until the ink runs dry, and then, as the sun threatens to rise over the wounded city, you dip your finger in salt water and trace one last letter on the stone floor, a shin, for Shaddai. For Shema. For what still shelters the doorway. Even when the door is gone, you find the mirror lying face down in a corner. Its cloth shroud has slipped slightly, as if death came too quickly to finish the custom. Dust clings to the edges. A single crack runs through the silvered glass like a tear that couldn't find its way out. The house is quiet now, not the sacred hush of Shabbat, not the brittle silence of study, but that hollow absence after too much has happened. You walk slowly, the floor creaks beneath you, the smell of broken wood and dried herbs lingers in the air, za'atar, lavender, something burnt. Somewhere nearby, a chair lies on its side, two legs splintered like old arguments. This was a mourning house. The low benches still sit in a half circle, a torn black ribbon hangs from a nail. Someone tried to begin Shiva. But the Crusaders arrived before the second day. A bowl of lentils sits untouched on the table, already sprouting. There's a spoon beside it, wooden, carved with a dove. The handle is scorched, but the dove remains. You once asked your aunt why Jews cover mirrors in a house of mourning. She said, because grief should not see itself. And neither should vanity try to comfort it. Now you wonder, what happens when the mirror is covered before the body is cold, before the prayers are whispered, before the mourner knows whom they've lost? You kneel beside it, lift the cloth, look into the mirror. It reflects more ash than face. Your eyes don't seem to belong to you, they belong to someone older, someone who has already sat Shiva too many times. In the reflection, you see behind you, a cabinet, inside, a single candle, unlit, a folded white shirt, a book of psalms, bookmarked with a torn tassel from a talith, and on the wall, just above the cabinet, a name written in charcoal, Eliyahu. You whisper it, as if by saying it you can call someone back, but no one answers, only the groan of a cracked beam shifting in the ceiling above. You sit, you should get up, you should run, you should do something, but instead, you trace your finger along the floor, writing nothing, just feeling the texture of what remains. Stone. Dust. Memory. There's a custom, mostly among the old women of the Galilee, that when mourning is interrupted, the soul lingers confused. They leave water bowls at doorways, light a candle backwards, whisper the Shema twice. You do none of that. You just sit with the mirror, the not quite covered reflection of a grief that never got to speak. In the next room, there is a bed with a single pillow. Someone has pressed a handprint into the middle, still fresh, still damp. You wonder, did they wake before the door was broken down? Did they reach for their sandals? Did they know this was their last morning, or did they see the mirror being covered, and understand too much? The sun filters in through the hole in the wall, it catches on a shard of the mirror, casting a brief glint against the opposite wall. It looks like the edge of a letter, a lamed, maybe, tall. Bent slightly. Like a mourner standing for Kaddish, you hum the beginning of it, Yitgadol v'Yitkadash. Then stop, because this room is too full of the unsaid, and then, footsteps, outside, fast, familiar, someone young, you know before you see. The girl appears in the doorway, hair matted, face streaked, but eyes sharp. They're looking again, she says. You can't stay. You nod. She glances at the mirror, then back at you. I remember this place, she says. My uncle died here. They just started Shiva when the fires came. You stand, wrap the mirror properly this time, not to hide it, to finish the gesture. The girl lights the candle in the cabinet. Its flame is small, but steady. Then you both step out, not because the morning is done, because it was never allowed to begin. You find him exactly where they said he'd be, seated in the shattered doorway of the old yeshiva, talith draped over his shoulders. As if it were still just another morning in Jerusalem. He's not young, his beard is gray, with streaks of ash, his back is straight, even though the building behind him leans like it's exhausted. He doesn't look up when you approach, he's staring at the ground, as if the stones themselves are reciting a page of Talmud and he's just waiting for his turn to answer. You clear your throat, he raises one eyebrow. Are you here to argue, he asks, or to carry someone? You stammer, unsure. You were told to convince him to leave. The last group is gathering near the tunnels. He has until sundown. He waves a hand, tell them no. But, I've sat in this doorway for 50 years, he says. I taught their grandfathers. I married their parents. I buried their cousins. Let me greet them, too, at the end. Behind him, the walls are scorched, scroll fragments drift like dry leaves. A wooden bookshelf has collapsed inward, snapping under the weight of unspoken wisdom. You see a page stuck to the wall, Talmud Bavli, Tractate Sanhedrin. You can still read a line, Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek elolam haba. Every Jew has a portion in the world to come. The rabbi chuckles. You know the next part. You nod, except those who deny the resurrection of the dead. He smiles, good. At least you were listening. He reaches into his coat and pulls out a bundle, wrapped in linen. He opens it slowly. Inside, an ink-stained Talmud page, a strip of parchment with a verse from Isaiah, and a broken pair of reading glasses. These are what I chose to carry. You sit beside him. For a moment, you say nothing. The air smells of burnt cedar, ink, and sweat. A page flips in the wind. I don't want to die, he says. I want to argue until sunrise. But there are some fires you don't run from. He tells you the story of the Vilna Jain refusing a royal exemption, of Rashi's grandson staying behind during the massacres of the Rhineland to bury the bodies, of sages who left only footnotes and blood, and you think that's noble? You ask, I think, he says, if a fire consumes the library. The librarian should not be found in the cellar. You look at his hands, they are ink-stained, knuckles thick. He was once a carpenter. He offers you a line from Perkei Avot, Makam She'en Anishim, Hishtadel Li Hayadish. In a place where there are no men, strive to be a man. You ask, and if there are only children left? He nods, solemn, then let the children remember what a man looks like. He takes off his talith and folds it with care, not reverence, familiarity. This, he says, belongs to a boy named Shmuel. He left it here 2 days ago. Tell him I didn't forget. He hands it to you. You stand. The sun is lower now. Soon the last group will vanish into the tunnels. He opens his Talmud again. The pages crackle. You ask him, what are you studying? He shrugs, whatever survived the fire. You ask, will you say Kaddish for us? He smiles, you'll say it for me. A gust of wind blows through the doorway, the talith flutters in your hands. You walk away, not fast, not crying, just carrying something heavier than cloth, and behind you, as the shadows stretch, a voice begins to chant in Aramaic, slow, steady, unbroken, as if words, too, can stand guard. You slip through a trapdoor beneath a ruined baker's stall, stone oven cracked, flowers scattered like snow across scorched cobblestones, and you fall into song, not because you mean to, because someone else already is. It's faint at first, just a thread of melody curling through the air like steam. the notes are uneven. Hummed by tiny voices, you crawl toward them, belly to dust, knees scraping stone, and there, beneath the floorboards, lit by one stub of candle wax, sit 4 children in a circle. One sings, 2 rock side to side, the 4th holds a doll missing both arms, rocking her too. The cellar smells of onions, sweat, and the salt of held-back tears. The air is thick, too many lungs. Not enough space, but it is warmer than above, and softer. You recognize the tune, Oifen Preiptschik. By the hearth, the teacher teaches the Aleph Bet, but there is no hearth here, just a cracked oil lamp and the warmth of shared breath. The eldest child sees you, she raises a finger to her lips, you nod. One of the smaller boys clutches a wooden spoon like a sword. The girl with the doll begins to sing louder, Zog nit keen mol az du geist dem letzten Weg. Do not say you walk the final road. It's not a lullaby, not originally, but here, in this hiding place, it becomes one. Each child has something tucked in a pocket, a lucky stone, a folded piece of torn cedar, a crust of bread. One has a broken dreidel. He spins it on the dirt floor, it lands on Gimel. He smiles, God wins. He whispers. You ask how long they've been here. No one answers. Time does not pass underground, it huddles. There's an old woman in the corner, wrapped in a wool shawl, eyes closed, murmuring names in a circle, as if she's winding a protective spell. You sit beside the children, they shift to make room. The youngest offers you a corner of their blanket. We sing so they don't hear us, the eldest says. You nod, but it's more than that. They sing to fill the silence before the scream. To stretch time, to keep from forgetting the sound of something human. You remember your own mother's voice, how she'd hum while peeling potatoes, always off-key, always right. You hum with them now, not words, just the tune. It catches in your throat, then takes root. Somewhere above, a crash, boots, a shout, everyone freezes. Then the girl with the doll whispers something, a story, about a goat that once led a family through a secret tunnel. You know this tale, they all do. It's not true, but it's true, because truth, in times like these, is what keeps the heart beating. The children begin the tune again, slower now, more whisper than song. One child covers the candle stub with a clay cup. Darkness, still the singing continues. A floorboard groans overhead, dust falls. You do not breathe. Then silence, real silence, then retreat. The boots fade, a long exhale from the old woman, a cough from the boy with the spoon. The girl hums louder. You reach into your coat, offer them half an apple. It's soft, but sweet. They pass it around like it's the first fruit in Eden. You ask what they'll do if the Crusaders find them. The eldest shrugs. Sing louder, she says. And you realize, this is resistance, not with swords, with lullabies, with stubborn melody, with memory. Somewhere in the back of the cellar, a string of garlic swings from a beam, half crumbled, half whole. You stare at it as the children sing. You think about the kitchen it came from, about the mother who hung it, about how songs and garlic and names all try to keep death out. The melody fades, the children sleep. You stay, because tonight, beneath the city, you found the last unbroken sanctuary, a room full of little voices, and not one of them willing to forget. The courtyard is quiet, the kind of quiet that feels ancient, as if the stones themselves are holding their breath. You push through a splintered gate, half-hinged, leaning like a drunk uncle after a wedding, and step into the forgotten garden, and there it is, still standing, still green, the olive tree. Its trunk is twisted like an old man's hands. Its roots, gnarled and deep, split the earth in 2 places, one by the well, one beneath what used to be the synagogue steps. They say it was planted when the city still had kings, that it outlived the Romans, the Persians, the caliphs, the quarrelsome rabbis, the generous widows, and now us. Its bark bears carvings, initials, stars, a faint outline of a hamsa. You brush the trunk with your fingers. The grooves are smooth, worn by weather and the rubbing of generations who came to lean, to listen, to cry. There's a superstition, probably born in a Galilean tavern, that olive trees never forget, that they remember every hand that picked their fruit, every secret whispered beneath their shade, that their leaves murmur in Hebrew when the wind blows right. Today, they barely rustle, but somehow, you feel watched. Not threatened, just seen. A broken sandal lies beneath the branches, children sighs. You imagine a boy hiding here as the city burned, you imagine his breathing, ragged, terrified. You imagine the tree wrapping him in shade, like a mother would. You sit at the base, the soil is warm, the kind of warmth that comes from things buried deeply and left undisturbed for centuries. There's a blackened stain on one of the roots, you don't ask what it is, you already know. You think of the Talmudic story of Choni the circle maker, who saw a man planting a carob tree. When asked why, the man said, "Just as my ancestors planted for me, so too I plant for my children." Maybe someone planted this olive tree with the same thought, and now, the children are gone, but the tree still stands. You pluck a single olive. It's unripe. Bitter, but alive. In a crevice of the trunk, something glints. You dig gently, a copper pendant, a Magen David scratched into it with a knife tip, uneven, childlike. You press it to your chest. It's cold, then warm. You think of blessings. There's one for everything. For lightning. For bread. For bad news. But is there a blessing for the last tree in a ruined courtyard? For the only living witness that doesn't weep? You whisper Baruch Atah. But the words trail off, not forgotten, just unfinished. A bird lands in the branches, black, beady-eyed. It caws once, then flies. You think maybe it's a warning, or maybe it's just tired. Too, the shadows grow long. You stand, brush the dust from your knees, leave the pendant in the roots, because some stories should be whispered back to the earth. As you walk away, the wind shifts, the leaves rustle faintly. You don't imagine it, you know the sound. It's Hebrew, soft. Ancient, a lullaby about olives and oil, and how the light never goes out. You find her in the corner of what used to be a tailor's shop. The door is gone, the sign is scorched, but the needle still moves, back and forth, threaded with blue. She doesn't look up as you enter, she just says, "Shut the curtain, please." The light offends the stitches. You look up. There is no curtain, there is barely a window. But you nod, and take your place beside her. The room smells of wool, oil, and something faintly sweet, maybe pomegranate peel left in a bowl weeks ago. The fabric on her lap is a tattered talith, fringes torn, stains like rust, but the corners are strong, and the stripes still remember how to pray. She is stitching names, each one in Hebrew letters, small and tight, into the lining, not on the outside, too public, not across the shoulders. That's for Torah, but inside, where the cloth meets the chest. "These were my sons," she says, eyes on her thread, then, after a pause, "and their sons." You glance down, one name is yours. It stuns you, not because it's impossible, but because it means someone remembered. "I stitch everyone I can," she says. "Some I know. Some I guess. Some I just dream." There's an old Ashkenazi custom she recalls from her mother, embroidering names into wedding garments, so the ancestors could dance too. But this isn't a wedding, and the dancing is over. Still, the stitches go on. You ask what she'll do when the shawl is full. She doesn't stop, just threads the next letter. "I'll start another." You offer to help, your hands shake. You haven't sewn since you were a child, when you stitched a toy pillow crooked and your uncle laughed until he cried. She hands you a square of linen, bold, fringed at the edge. You begin with one name, Shava Bat Miriam. You ask how she decides which name comes next. She shrugs, "Whoever knocks on my thoughts loudest." You stitch, your fingers prick, the blood stains. She doesn't flinch. "There," she says. "Now they'll never be forgotten." Outside, a Crusader's shout echoes, close, then silence. You tighten the thread. There's a spool on the floor beside you. It's nearly gone. You reach for more. She opens a tin. Inside, tangled threads, some too short to be useful. "These are the names I couldn't finish," she whispers. "Children." Infants. People whose names I never knew. You sit with that, somewhere. Someone once said that to name the dead is to keep them alive. That's what Kaddish is for, what Yizkor is for, but what do you do when there's no one left to say it? You say it with a needle, you say it with cloth, you say it in silence. She hums an old lullaby, not the tune from your childhood, older, Yiddish, the kind sung while folding bread dough or ironing Shabbat shirts. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you feel them, not the stitches, the people. You open them again. The Talith now bears hundreds of names, some crooked, some perfect, none erased. The widow ties it shut with care, wraps it in a bundle of wool, and places it inside an empty Torah ark. They'll rest here, she says, until the scrolls return. You rise to leave. She hands you a single thread, blue. Start your own, she says, and somehow, in the wreckage of the city, you begin to understand what it means to write memory not in ink, but in stitches. You come back at dawn, not because you think you'll find someone still alive, but because you owe the city your footsteps. The streets are quieter now, not safe, never safe, but quieter, like the pause between verses. You walk past the olive tree, its leaves are still, past the tailor's shop. The curtain never drawn, past the ruined Beit Midrash, no more ink. No more names, and yet, something lingers. The doorways still whisper. You pause beside one, where a scorched mezuzah clings stubbornly to the charred frame. It's cracked, but the parchment scroll within, miraculously, remains dry. You unroll it gently. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. You whisper it aloud, not loudly, not to anyone, just enough for the stones to hear, and when you do, the wind stirs, only slightly, a brush along your cheek, a shift in the ashes, a movement in the dust so subtle you'd miss it if you weren't listening for memory. It carries the scent of oil, smoke, and bread never baked, and it carries words, not voices, not ghosts, but words, a phrase here, a blessing there, a question from the Talmud, my nafka mina? What difference does it make? And the answer, soft as the rustle of old paper, to remember. You step further, a piece of cloth flutters from a window, Talith fringe, threadbare. You tuck it into your coat pocket, not to keep, just to carry a little longer. You sit on a low stone wall, close your eyes, you hear it again, the hum of children beneath the floorboards, the soft Kaddish from the yeshiva steps, the laugh of a goat in a hidden alley. The wind knows their names. Someone once said that every breath in Hebrew carries a piece of the divine, that to speak is to pray, and if that's true, then the city still prays, not in grandeur, not in choir, but in fragments. The crack of an old hinge, the creak of scorched beams, the shuffle of footsteps in a language older than stone. You rise. There's no one left to guide you, but the path is clear, not straight, not paved, but lined with stories, woven with stitches, scored with ash. As you walk away, a breeze trails behind. It does not push you, it simply remembers, and in its wake, the dust lifts, just slightly, forming, for a heartbeat, the shape of a letter, a bet, the first letter of the Torah, the beginning, not the end. And now, you can rest. You've walked among ashes tonight, not just of buildings, but of lullabies, stitched prayers, and forgotten laughter, and still, you made it through. You followed a goat through alleyways, heard a rabbi whisper the last word of Torah before dawn. You sat beneath an olive tree that remembers more than we do. You touched a shawl sewn with names the world tried to erase. You listened to children sing above the sound of fear, and you didn't look away. Not because you're brave, but because memory isn't heavy when it's shared. Let the images settle now, the cracked mezuzah still hanging, the whisper of Hebrew in the wind, the letter bet rising from dust like the beginning of a sentence that has not ended. There's a Yiddish saying, Az mi muz, ken men. When one must, one can. Tonight, we remembered a city that had to, and did, so take a breath, let your own name be spoken in the silence, feel it carried, like salt in ink, like thread through cloth, like wine through broken gates. The world has lost many things, but not your voice, not your listening, not the quiet genius of those who refuse to forget. Tomorrow will come, as it always does, but tonight, may you sleep knowing, that not everything was taken. Some songs stayed, some letters lingered. Some winds still speak our name, good night, child of memory.